Welcome to this week's podcast of The Creative Niche. Today, we're going to be talking about innovation in the marketplace, not only with what we do, but just what business owners, entrepreneurs, and everybody in between needs to kind of look at as they're growing their business, as they're growing in entrepreneurship. So what better way to kind of start it off today is Mr. Reggie Buehrer on you becoming an entrepreneur. And I think that you've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I think that you've had a lot of opportunities in the marketplace. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but we're also going to be talking about just ways that any business, can take an innovative product to market. So, welcome.
Thank you. I was curious what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, well, now you know. So today we're going to really just be talking about. So we have, we'll start a little bit about what we are marketing now. Is we're marketing digitally printed art glass, and we're marketing, that same line into the cemetery business, which a lot of our listeners already know. Mm-hmm. But it's hard. It's hard to bring new product to the market, and I think that we all struggle with taking that first step on a product that's somewhat obscure to a marketplace that's established and creating value, and that's where we're at in the process. Is we have a great product and we're taking it to market, and so it's exciting but challenging.
Yeah, I think anytime you have a new product, it's challenging. I think it probably had to be challenging when everything started going digital in I'm talking about the camera industry, when Kodak and Polaroid and all of those kind of companies had the standard, 35 millimeter, or even before that, the Polaroid shots that just came out the end of your camera. I mean, when everything went digital, that was a huge change,
right? And
that had to be a paradigm shift. So that company, like Kodak and Polaroid and all those type of companies, and Canon, they had to make this shift from the way it's always been done, like in an analog, and you go into the black room and develop that film, but now everything's digital. And
the thing of it is you didn't know what kind of shot you had.
No.
You had to take 3 times as many shots, but
Absolutely.
You didn't want to. Why? Because it cost the film cost just to develop it could get expensive.
Right.
In the digital world.
Yeah, I mean, you can
whammo.
now you can take shots and you know exactly what you've got. And so there's so many industries that have come out with new innovation, and you either got to catch up or you are the innovator. And for those companies who are the innovators, it forces some of these older companies to catch up if they want to stay relevant. And I think of even like the tape stores, when it used to be
Family video,
Blockbuster. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you went there to get your video cassette tape.
Right.
I mean, some of the kids today probably don't even know what that is. Or it's like the old cassettes.
VHS, the old VHS.
Yeah.
So we started with VHS, and then we moved to DVDs. And I remember, when my Uncle Randy, he jumped on the Netflix bandwagon back when they was shipping these discs
out in the mail.
And so we would have these discs, that he would have mailed to him, and we would watch the video, and then he's like, you got to do this. You put it in the envelope, you ship it, and they send you a new video. But even before that, so like with VHS, like when we would watch a movie and you would watch half of it and you would pause it. You might have watched that movie once, but you might have watched it 10 times. And in that course of 10 times, you would want to skip maybe way past. And I'll never forget my Uncle Randy was like, this is great. This is great. Like we can just choose where we want to be. Because it was digital, right? So it was on a disc. And so it would give you these little thumbnails of where you could jump into that video.
The movie.
Where in VHS, you kind of...
Be kind and rewind.
Yeah, be kind and rewind. That was nuts. Today our kids don't even know what that phrase was. Be kind and rewind.
Yeah.
Or we got to crank up the window.
They wouldn't know what it meant.
When they say, "Hey, roll up the window," what do you mean?
You just push the button.
It's just buttons anymore. So we look at a lot of these industries and we look how this massive change happened over the course of. I'm not even going to say a generation. We're talking about 10 years, 20 years in some cases, where the entire industries were flipped on their ear. And what we're trying to do is trying to be innovators, right?
I remember when the red boxes came into the Walmarts and the McDonald's, and now, I mean, everybody's streaming. I mean, you talk about industries that changed literally overnight. I mean, we're not talking about, used to be an industry would be good for decades or a century. You know, think of the steel industry or whatever. Not a lot's probably changed in the steel industry or any of those type of coal mining.
We'd probably be surprised. There's probably more changes. Them guys would probably argue with us.
I suppose. Yeah, you know, and that's probably true because I don't know a lot about it.
Right.
But when it comes to the technology side, man, the changes are massive. And you really, as an innovator, you really have to always try to stay ahead.
You know, I wonder, did they franchise those red boxes? I think they probably did. You know, like you would probably buy a certain area, and then
you're paying for the electricity,
and then you'd be putting these red boxes in, and I think that was really cool at the time because why would it seem like the right way to go at the time before streaming really took off? You know, you would have a brick and mortar store that had all these videos in it, and somebody would say, why would I do that if I can just create a box that logs it and by automation it spits out a disc and I don't have to pay anybody. I get paid every time somebody goes and gets it. In a way, that seemed like the wave of the future, but man, that was short-lived. Man, streaming came in right after that.
Yeah, I think especially with the technology side of things, you really got to stay on top of everything. I guess it's keep going back to Kodak. And if they wouldn't have made some changes, or Canon, I mean, you're dead in the water.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And there's a lot of businesses today, a lot of people probably that may listen to this podcast that will realize they're in a dying business and they don't know what to do. And maybe they haven't socked money away for trying to create R&D or to go into improve in their technology capabilities within their particular industrial niche, you know, whatever that may be.
You know, and I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, right? And you know, an entrepreneur started the company, right? An entrepreneur would have said, okay, let's go back to the film industry. You know, if we can produce a piece of equipment that can take all these pictures and we can put it on a roll and people can come and develop it, you know, that's really, really cool technology, right? And so the entrepreneur seen a need, and they addressed that need, and then they created a product that people it solved a need or a want or whatever you want to look at. You know, they solve problems. An entrepreneur is going to solve a problem, and then they hire people, and the other people that they hire in a lot of cases, they're not entrepreneur, they're workers, and there's nothing wrong with workers. Y'all need a certain group of people that helps push that ball forward. But if you're not an entrepreneur, when things get tough and you have to change the market, a lot of times those people, they're not geared for that type of risk. They're geared to run a company. They might even be a really educated person or a good worker, but they're not geared to take on that risk. They know their expenses. They know that this job provides enough for those expenses, and they're happy with that. Yeah. But man, if you run into a tough time, spending the money to innovate is hard because they never had to go through it the first time.
Yeah, I think of Steve Jobs, you know, who would look at what he would see as a challenge or a problem, and he would figure out how to solve it. Mm-hmm. You know, back in the day, probably a little bit before your time, people would start to put these music CDs in their car, but then they started coming out with these bigger units that could hold 50 or 100 discs. Mm-hmm. And they would put them in the trunk of the car, and then they could program that disc so that they could play whatever music they wanted. Well, he came out with a little, I don't know if it was an iPod or if there was
a little MP3 player.
MP3 player that you could have them all on this little device that now you could even plug it into your headphones. I mean, he was a man who was an entrepreneur who thought outside of the box, right? Who thinks of that kind of stuff. Yep. Well, innovators.
Yep. Cell phones.
Well, exactly.
Right? I mean, look at cell phones. And I think every market, you know, I look at a lot of these companies today, whether it's Apple or Microsoft or, you know, tech companies, security companies, you know, there's all kinds of different security companies out there that sell these, you know, whether they're security cameras, whether they're vacuum cleaners, whether they're lawnmowers, they've created automation, you know, and I admit I finally broke down. I had to buy a sweeper that swept my house for me, you know, because I figured out that my time was more valuable doing what I do and what I'm good at. It doesn't really pay me to go home and sweep the floors.
Right.
I mean, I know that sounds bad.
Don't you have kids for that?
I do, but they don't sweep. and and the sale was on. You got to buy it when the sale's
Got to
on,
buy it
right?
when the sale's on.
So, at the end of the day, I think you taught me, is when in business, if the deal's on the table today, pick it up.
Right.
If not, you could lose that opportunity. And that is I think that's a segment of itself. I mean, as an entrepreneur, they realize that, it might be hard to pick that deal up because it still costs you something. It's still going to cost you sacrifice. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost something, but you pick it up on a day-to-day basis. We're constantly picking up the next deal. Buy when the deal's on, because tomorrow it might be gone.
Right.
I mean, don't get yourself in trouble. Don't buy stupid debt. But at the end of the day, we're still, it's calculated risks. We talk about it all the time. It's calculated risks. I mean, we're not risk adverse, and we're not stupid with risks, but there's a certain amount of risk.
Yeah, I think if you want to be an innovator in whatever industry you are, and you can innovate in any industry, I'm convinced of that. It doesn't matter what business you're in or what industry you're in, there's innovation that can take place. Too many people fall into this trap. I'm going to do it the way Dad's done it or Grandpa's done it. You've heard me say that before. Too many businesses are going to, even if they're new businesses, they may say, I'm going to do it the way it's always been done because that's the safe bet. An innovator's different. It's a different kind of entrepreneur. It's somebody who sees a need and maybe doesn't even at the time know how to solve that need, but they just keep working and researching until they realize, if I make this change or move to this technology, or in some cases to this automation, I can make this particular product or service more, it's just better or quicker or faster, or saves my client money. Because at the end of the day, as a business person, I want to try and save my clients as much money as possible, and give them the most value. I guess maybe the value would be the right word to say. Is what can we do to give the client the most value for those dollars that they've earned? So,
going back to an old saying, we might lose some of the people here, but you have to keep your ear to the ground, right?
Yeah.
And why? And so we know that essentially is, you're putting your ear to the ground. You're trying to hear where something's coming from or where something's going, right? Mm-hmm. It might not be distinctively obvious to just standing up and walking, but if you want to know something, you got to put the ear to the ground. As a business owner, I think it's really important that we put our ear to the ground and we listen to the clients. What's your needs? What's your wants? How can we take our product and deploy it in a way that makes your life better, makes your product better, makes your organization better? In the glass industry, we're in the glass industry and we're innovators in that. And so what we do is we try to say, okay, so we have all these processes, we have all this equipment, we have all this automation, and we figured out that automation was going to create things faster, better, higher quality, and would service our end clients better than what we could do personally, right?
Right.
And so what we're finding is when we use innovation and we use automation and we use technology in very productive ways, we actually are helping the client. And so what we have to do, though, is we have to go back to that client and say, listen, what do you need and where do you need our product? Now, we can't always solve those problems like overnight, but I think that it's a constant goal of ours is to listen to the clients. Let's see where their needs are. And if we hear that need enough times, if we hear it once, it don't justify going down, right? There's certain markets that we can't be everything to everybody. But if we hear the need enough times, how do we address that need? Because evidently there's a portion of the market that wants it.
And you may have a great idea. And I think this is the challenge too, as an entrepreneur and somebody that's innovative. You can have this fantastical idea, but do you have the money to go through it? So now we're talking about R&D costs. It takes a lot of finances, a lot of times to fund the research, the development, and it's really about maybe starting with a sample product and then building on that and making changes and tinkering with it until you get it exactly dialed in to where, okay, now we've got it. Now it's ready to go to market. And that costs money and it costs time.
Yep.
And most risk-adverse entrepreneurs, I think every entrepreneur's got a little bit of risk-taking in their DNA, if you will. But when you start throwing in dollars, and time, a lot of entrepreneurs will maybe shy away from. I don't know if I don't want to go down that road because it's just too expensive.
Let's look at this as, let's see, how can I phrase this for you? R&D's messy.
Yeah.
It can be messy, in such a way, not that it's uncoordinated, but essentially it costs money. It's hard. Your product can't take off right away because you're developing it. So it costs, in your statement, you talked about the money involved, the time involved. And for a lot of people, it hurts, but at the end of the day, if you innovate right, and okay, well, let me ask you this question. So if you was going to innovate and you was going to do some R&D, do you put a number on it? Like, okay, I'm going to put $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 into this R&D. And if I don't see product at that, I quit. Or how do you,
it can be hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, right. So, so what is the indicator? And do you set those indicators up first, or you put it on like a schedule, like, okay, we have to be X, Y, and Z, and we have to follow the steps? It don't really work like that. To a certain extent, though, you have to have some kind of parameters, or else you will endlessly tinker and never take product to market.
I think you have to have stages where you have a real advancement or success, to where you say, okay, we're farther ahead. We've got the ball farther up the hill. Let's go to the next step and let's spend a little bit more and dial it in a little bit better. So I think you have to have some successes along the way, because there's times where you'll come up with what you think is a really good idea, but maybe for whatever reason it just doesn't have the market or whatever, and so you just say, well, I've wasted X amount of dollars, and I'm just gonna I'm going to walk away from that.
Yeah.
And I think this is a better route, and let's go down this path. So, I think flexibility is key in business, and especially in innovation. You have to be somewhat flexible to not just be okay, this is the direction I want to go. And now sometimes along the way, you may find that, okay, I was going this direction, but I realized this is a better avenue. And so you got to be willing to be flexible.
So,
and your team has to be flexible.
Right. And so the people that you put around you, if they're not on the same page, you're not going to go very far. And a lot of times in, the entrepreneur sense, we run into a problem to where you have to find that core group of people that's going to say, okay, we're all going to be involved, and we're all going to be committed to helping this goal move forward. And a lot of times, if you lose that, the dream goes away. But if you can keep people focused. So how do you motivate people to be innovative mindset?
Yeah, vision. You got to have a vision caster. You got to have somebody who says, this is the dream, this is the vision, and then you get them on board, and you say, oh, okay, I've never thought about that. So the person who's driving, let's say the main entrepreneur, you've got to have, or a team of people, you got to have somebody that's driving a vision. There has to be a vision and a goal. And then the team comes together, and you say, okay, this is the plan, this is the vision, how do we get there? But if you don't have a vision, you can't get there. If you don't have a destination, you'll never get there.
So, and I probably have said this in times past, but it's worth repeating, is, a lot of times people don't follow, the smartest and fastest person. They follow the person that knows where they're going. And I think that's really important, is we have to know where we're going. If you're at the top of any organization, of any entrepreneur organization, the entrepreneur has to know where they're going. It doesn't mean that they have to be the best or fastest at any one department, because they can hire for that. Like in manufacturing. So as we're manufacturing product, we are not on the floor managing that manufacturing. We have to hire a good person that manufactures product. Same thing on the sales side. Yes, we can do sales. However, at some point, it's probably more important that we get somebody that's all they do. That's their job, and they're excellent at it. And so whether it's sales or manufacturing or whatever, clerical, marketing, all of it, an entrepreneur typically isn't the tip of the spear on that. They are the tip of the spear on vision and where they're going.
Yeah. If you look at any big industry leader, let's say like a Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, or Mark Zuckerberg, or some of these people who have spearheaded large companies, they're the vision casters. But then they go out and they hire, they hire the best people. They hire the best accountants. They hire the best engineers, the best software engineers. They hire the best manufacturing people who build the machines that build the cars. In like Elon Musk, or Elon isn't down there on the. I mean, I guess he goes down on the floor some, but I mean, he's not really turning the wrenches most of the time. He's got other people that do that. He's got people who engineer these rockets and cars and batteries, and I don't know what his extent is to input in that, but he's hiring the best. And I think, if you really want to be successful, you got to hire some of the best people.
And, I think every business has a certain role of where, we want to be the most efficient business out there, right? And that's a good thing. And efficiency essentially will bring down cost, and it also will make you more productive, because you've got it down to a system. But during R&D mode, lean is the enemy of innovation.
Well, because
there's no money being spent. You're trying to cut, you're trying to save. And when you're scrimping and saving, you're not looking at the future. So there's times for both. In a business, sometimes you have to get lean.
I like the word frugal, because I think we're frugal with the money that we have, but we're not, again, so risk averse that we won't spend the money. We don't want to be too lean.
Yeah, no, and you got to be both at different times in the business cycle. There's times for both, but when you're in R&D, it's going to be messy. We're going to waste some money, but we're trying to get to another goal, and that goal is a lot of times. And really, are you wasting money? You're not really wasting money because you're learning something along the way.
Well, an example, I always think of Thomas Edison in this case on inventing the light bulb. I've heard as high as 10,000 tries before he got it to work to be truly successful. I don't know if it was 10,000 or if it was just thousands or hundreds, but I've heard it's in the thousands. And they asked him, said, well, don't you get discouraged that you've tried all these things? And he said, no, I found 10,000 things that don't work, or thousands of things that don't work. In the process, he learned something. And so with through the engineering or, the process of it, you do learn things that maybe don't work, or you learn something that it was an unexpected result. It was like light bulbs go off. Okay. No pun intended, but light bulbs go off and you're like, oh my gosh, this is it. But because you tried all these different things, these 100 things or 1,000 things, all of a sudden you almost like stumbled onto something.
Yeah.
I hate that way that sounds, but to be honest, that's.
Have you ever bought a car?
I have.
Okay. It's interesting, right? What's the difference between a 2021 and a 2024 vehicle?
I suppose there's some new features and a price tag.
The price goes up. They add a few features and they change the body style once every 3 or 4 years. But for 2 or 3 years, they keep that body style the same, but they change it. But every change that they do, these engineers, they're like, this is the best thing. This is the best thing that's ever been created. It was what I've just produced. And they have these engineers, and all they're doing on these, that's their job, is to innovate. Why? Because they know if they don't innovate, nobody's going to buy the newer model. Why? Because it's the same as the last year model. There is a certain amount of waste, that those engineers have, but in the process, they're creating a new feature that sells a whole bunch more cars. Yeah. But what do the engineers have to do? Or what do the salespeople have to do with what the engineers feel like is the next best thing? Is they have to sell it. And so we have to get new product to market, right?
Right.
We have to get new product to market. Yeah. And we know what we have is the future. And we know that what we can do with glass is the future of our industry and a lot of industries. We're on the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
But how do you get how do we get an obscure product that very few people know about to the mass market?
Yeah, because they just don't know.
They just don't know.
You can't want something that you don't even know exists.
Yep.
Right?
That's right.
And so that's the key is getting word out to where people understand, oh, this exists. Oh, I want that.
We got to create awareness.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so marketing, right?
Right, absolutely.
So marketing is the tip of the spear, and in this sense of the word, of getting in front of the clients that they need or want what what certain entrepreneurs need, whether it's our business, whether it's any business. It doesn't matter.
And it's different for every business.
That's right.
If you're selling a drink of some sort, let's say it's an energy drink or a fruit drink, or you're selling a product like a camera system or whatever, the way you market that's going to be different for every type of product or service that you're offering.
So energy drinks are for people that are short on energy, but they're active. They want to go, right?
Yeah, but now they target the young kids to say, this is trendy, this is what you want. And so they're targeting a certain, not only just
or athletic.
It's not just the way they market, it's to who they market to.
Yep. So you got to know who is
your market.
The market is, you got to know what they want, and you got to solve a problem. We're solving, a lot of different problems. Identifying those people is something that we always have to look at in any business. When you're marketing to photographers, per se, you got to know what they're asking for. Is the lighting good? How's the stands going to be? What's the shot that you want? And what time of day do I need to take this picture? And do I have a mechanical fix to that problem? All these things are just, as entrepreneurs, you have to look at what's now and how can we improve something. That's how we have to market. Yeah. In our industry, we get to take stained glass to places it's never been. We get to take digitally printed stained glass to areas that maybe couldn't have taken it before because of code violations. We have to have, it has to have safety glass classifications, which the digitally printed art glass can do. We're fusing inks onto pieces of glass that are permanent. Those are pretty awesome things that we're able to offer with our innovation, with our product line. So it's a challenge for us as well.
Yeah, not coming out of, but in the stained glass industry, for as long as I can remember, everything's always been done the same way. And going back hundreds of years, okay, that's a little bit before my time, but it was always still done the same way with the same tools, same basic things. Now that we've introduced the printing on glass, that's just huge. It saves times, it's higher quality, it's greater precision on every aspect of it. So it's an exciting time for us as a company to be able to offer something that's so innovative. And again, it comes back to awareness that people can't want what they don't even know exists.
And marketing can be expensive.
It can be,
when we talk about R&D costs and the amount of money that you have to outlay to begin with just to bring product to market, and then the marketing costs are, if you're putting it in a publication or whether you do TV ads or whether, depending on the market you're going for, we have to either use TV, radio, magazines, internet. How do we get in front of the right people at the right time? And that's all going to be dependent on the market that you're in.
Yeah, and so you got to know who your client is, no matter what business you're in, whether you're selling cameras or trinkets or that's inexpensive that you want to get out to the masses. You got to know who your market is. And if you don't know who your market is, you're going to waste a lot of money on marketing. Putting money on billboards, for instance, might be a waste of money if your clientele isn't driving down the road.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's even billboards. In a business, we've owned multiple businesses, and we used to advertise in billboards, and it worked great for us 40 years ago. But I don't, just my personal opinion, I don't think billboards are a great option now unless you're in very, very specific targeted market.
Yeah. No,
radio, we used to do a lot with radio. Radio is kind of, the traditional AM, FM type. I don't know. Does a lot of people listen to radio anymore? Standard radio?
I think there's a demographic. The people that listen to the radio are, I'm going to think more of your general construction type guys that are on their way to the job site. Yep. They're playing it in the background. They're that type of demographic of people that's in the construction field.
A good point.
Plumbers, electricians. A lot of times they have their radios. Yep. So a good item to market on that is, something that they find valuable. Yeah. Whether it's an energy drink, maybe that's a great place to advertise it, is on the radio. Concerts, if these people love listening to music, they might want to go to a concert, and that's a great place to advertise for a concert. So once again, it comes down to market.
It does. You have to know your market. You have to know that demographic, that age group. It's just really, really key.
Maybe a supermarket selling their milk really cheap that week. That might appeal to those people that are saying, "Hey, yeah, let's go get that." I don't know, but every source of information has a certain amount. For me, I don't listen. I mean, I listen to music, but that's not my main goal. I'm information driven. I love information. I can consume information, and I love to get it and use it and deploy it. And so I like podcasts. This is what we're doing today. I love listening to podcasts that are of interest to me. Whether doesn't matter what you're interested in. I guarantee they have a podcast of some sort. And so maybe. That's a way that a lot of people get information anymore. Internet, obviously the internet's out there, but the internet is so massive. I mean, how do you rein in, that really, for us, we have a niche product, something that is tailored towards a smaller group than
A very specific clientele, yeah.
And so we have to market that extra special to get that. And it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Our market is smaller, but it's very targeted. Some markets are very broad.
If you're selling tennis shoes, everybody needs a pair of tennis shoes, right? Everybody.
Yes.
Without exception. Pretty much. Everybody has a pair of tennis shoes or something like that. But
then you have to advertise everywhere.
Everywhere.
You know?
Absolutely.
So that's the big difference, right?
Well, there's a lot of players out there. So I mean, you're competing not just with the big boys, Nike and all these other Adidas and whatever. Now you got to compete against all the other shoe companies and the little startups, and it's kind of like breweries today. It used to be, going back 4 or 5 decades, 6 decades ago, there was a few big breweries, and now you got all these micro breweries, and now everybody's got to compete within that market.
Coffee shops.
I mean,
geez, I'm crying. I don't know how many coffee shops we have around, but it just doesn't seem like they should be able to have that many coffee shops or gas stations. Oh my gosh. I mean, you go to one town and there's 14 gas stations in the course of a mile. Like how do you all stay busy?
Yeah.
But they're marketing to the masses.
Yeah, so
it's different.
It's just a different challenge. So when you're selling something that everybody needs, that's a different challenge than something like what ours is a little more well defined in as far as we have a more limited clientele because now we're selling to churches and cemeteries. Well, there's not. Like in the United States, there's roughly 350 million people that need sneakers.
Yep.
But not 350 million churches and cemeteries that need our product.
So to entrepreneurs out there, what we're going to tell you is it is extremely important to find value, right? You have to find value that your clients, your customers are looking for, and you got to deploy that value. And if you don't deploy that value, essentially, you're going to get lost in the sea.
Yeah.
Lost to the sea of millions of options.
Yeah.
I mean, I would hate to compete against, somebody that they make 3 cents per product. Mm-hmm. I've heard of manufacturing companies that they make their money on the waste.
The shavings.
Yes. Like subtraction manufacturing, like the product if they make any money, it's minimal. They make their money on the recycling. I mean, I don't understand that type of manufacturing. It's not the same type that we're in. I mean, we have to.
You got to make a lot of pieces.
You got to make a lot of pieces. Yeah. I mean, if you're making your money on the waste.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's 100% true, but that's what I've heard.
Yeah, I have heard that, but I just, I don't know if that's really true or not. I'd like to think it's not, but yeah, that'd be a scary thought.
So let me ask you this. How do you translate that out to your client? How do you get the client on board to say, wow, that is really innovative and something I have to have? That's a tough question. You can think about it for a second. I mean, those are tough. And I think those are questions we have to ask ourselves as entrepreneurs. I mean, it's not good enough to have a great idea. What we need is that client input on what they feel like is a great idea, because it doesn't matter if we like it.
Yeah, I think if the client understands that it's a higher quality, more durable, for less money, it's right there. Just even those 3 things should really, it makes the product sell very well, because you've got something that is meeting their need. Again, higher quality, lower cost, because most people, even if they have tons of money, price is still an object. I'll bet Jeff Bezos probably on that $500 million boat. Probably, I think they call it a yacht there, right? I'll bet he still was price sensitive. Maybe not.
I doubt
I
it.
suppose. Okay, maybe not.
I doubt it.
Maybe
I
he
don't
wasn't
think
a good
I don't think
example.
he really cared.
Maybe he was a good example.
It was a good, yeah.
Maybe not a good example. Maybe if it would have cost $100 million more, he wouldn't have cared.
Let's put it this way.
But most people are price sensitive, even if they're frugal. I mean, they are, or even I know frugal people are, but most people, even if they have money, they still are price sensitive. So they want to have a good value. I think that's the key. If people think they're getting a good value and a good product, then it sells.
You know, I'm not a farmer, and I don't know if this has always been like this or not, but you know, the wagons that you have, they have the little chute out the bottom that allows your product to come out of that wagon and go in and, you know, essentially go to market, right? It goes to the elevator, and the elevator, you know, that's
the way it was done about 20 years ago.
Right. But let's say that there was, you know, originally that chute was not on the bottom, but it was up 3 or 4 feet. And then you would leave 3 to 4 feet of product. Now it's maybe coming down to a point, but you lost that. But if somebody came up with that chute at the bottom that allowed you to get 100% of that out, that would be a good innovation. Because either one, it either saves you from jumping in there and scooping out the grain.
Well, when I grew up, they had flatbed wagons.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
You know, and then you put the grain in the flatbed wagons, because I grew up on the farm, small farm, and then they come with gravity wagons, which were you were just mentioning. So, now they use semis.
So I'm not crazy.
Yeah, not crazy, but now they use semis.
But essentially, what they did is they had an innovation that they allowed to maximize the amount of product that you could get out of the bottom of that wagon. That was important. That added value.
It was easier.
And it saved time, and it was easier.
Yeah.
So with our product, you know, that's kind of what we're doing is we're trying to create value by creating high value or very detailed, what would have originally been extremely expensive in the stained glass side. So exactly to your point, we created value, we created precision, and we created a market of people that found, yeah. Let's go back to the cemetery. So as far as the cemetery goes, you know, our product introduces artwork. And in the cemetery business, we know that a lot of times artwork is where people like to be interned, you know, for
close to the artwork.
Close to the artwork. Right. Thank you. I was struggling with my thought there, but you know, that is something that they value. And so if we're able to produce that artwork at less cost, and the cemetery gets a usable unit, a columbarium where they can actually, you know, place, you know, urns into, but still get that artwork, it's the best of both worlds. We've added value and sellable space. That's pretty cool too. You know, one of my points was it brings high value liturgical artwork at a, you know, reasonable price to churches, cemeteries, and mausoleums. I think that pretty much, encompassed all that. You know, in closing, you know, I think what we're trying to get at is, as far as the entrepreneur market out there, we're trying to encourage people to not only create good products, but, you know, find ways to take them to market. You know, find ways of adding value, adding your spin on whatever market you're in. And, you know, one thing that I would say is, you know, just a quick tagline is, to stay productive, we have to stay uncomfortable. Because it's not usually comfortable to keep pushing that ball forward or keep pushing it up a hill.
If you're comfortable, you're probably stagnating or getting behind. And if you're not moving forward, you're getting behind. Right. In today's technological age, you're going to get behind.
And we've seen companies, we've seen entire industries get comfortable with where they are. I look at Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood, I think they was comfortable for a long time. Like, we're always going to be able to just, you know, do what we do. And you know, now, man, we don't get very good movies out anymore. It's almost like stagnated. I don't know. I mean, we always used to look at it. What's the next big blockbuster coming out? When I was a kid, I mean, they would have all kinds of movies throughout the summer. Man, that is just like.
And you went to the theater to see it.
And you did go to the theater. Now people have home theaters.
Well, now they just stream it. They wait 6 months and it streams. So,
right.
There's another industry that I think is in danger. You know, the movie theaters is probably in danger. And I don't know a good fix for that one.
No. Got to be willing to change. Got to definitely be willing to change.
And so for, like, in our industries, whether it's the monument industry or the stained glass industry, I see a lot of peers who are in that 60 and 70-year-old, they're just going to retire out.
Well, they have no kids.
Yeah,
Right?
most of them don't have kids coming back into the business. I'm very fortunate because all of my kids are in their business and all of their spouses are in the business, and so that helps could carry that ball forward. But a lot of my peers in those industries, they're just looking to retire out.
Yep. Yeah,
And so then you don't have to innovate, right?
Right, you don't have to innovate, you coast. And we see those companies too.
Yeah.
We see a lot of companies that as they're innovate, or they don't innovate because they know, I only got 5 years. I got 10 years. And once I get through 5 to 10 years,
they can
I'll
coast
retire.
out.
I'm done, and I'll collect my own my retirement. I'll maybe sell the business, or I'll just close the doors. Doesn't
But you
matter.
know what? We're not coasters.
We're not
We're not coasting out.
Sometimes we ride coasters. but we don't. No, we don't coast. It's it is interesting because you hear a lot of people. I think of Charlie Kirk. The late Charlie Kirk. What an impact that the man had in 31 years.
Yeah.
What an impact that he had. 1,000 employees, massive amount of following that guy brought. Faith, family. And just the overall freedom that he tried to preach across the country. Pretty neat story of his life. But and I'll butcher this quote, but essentially, he always made the comment that if you try to be happy, it's going to be a struggle. And like I said, this is a butchered quote, but if you try to be happy, it's going to be a struggle. But if you try to do something purposeful, or productive, then you will be purposeful. And it was just a neat way to think about life. Is you need to have a purpose, and you'll be more productive when you have a purpose rather than just trying to be happy.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. I think we have that entrepreneur spirit. We're excited about where the company's going. You're first generation. We got second generation. We're looking at bringing in third generation people. So we have a purpose to grow because we have people coming behind us.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah.
That's what makes it fun. That's what makes businesses go, is when they're not trying to say, how can I coast out the next 5 to 10 years? But okay, we got people coming behind us, so how can we grow this? And that's what every entrepreneur needs to do. If you're early on, you're already ready to go. You're already ready to move that ball forward. But as you get a little bit older, it's also important to, if you have that next generation, to make sure you're pushing the ball forward. Yeah. So. Any last comments that you would like to talk to the audience about, or
Innovate. I think that's just the key. If you're in business, you better be on that path.
You got to be.
Yeah.
You got to be. So make sure you guys' ambitions. Make sure that your products and your thoughts and what you want is growing on a day-to-day basis. But for this week's episode, we hope that you got a little bit of information out of us on how to be good entrepreneurs, how to be good innovators, how to be that next forward-thinking person in your industry, because it's really important. So until next time, this is myself, Jason, and Reggie on The Creative Niche. We'll see you next time.